By the time they reached their peak, the Ottoman Empire stretched across 3 continents and stood for 6 centuries. They built massive complexes of stone and marble, ruling over millions from palaces that projected absolute, unshakable power. But if you rewind to the 13th century, you won't find marble. You'll find the vast, wind-blown steppes of Central Asia. Here lived a sprawling confederation of nomads known as the Oghuz Turks. These were independent pastoral clans who measured strength by the swiftness of their horses rather than the size of their fortresses. Among them was the Kai tribe, a people who lived in felt tents and survived by following the rhythms of the seasons. Their way of life was suddenly threatened by the westward expansion of the Mongols. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, this new power was systematically dismantling the established order of the East, driving entire nations into flight. To survive, the Kai fled. Over several generations, they were pushed further west, weaving through the lands of modern-day Iran and Azerbaijan. They stayed in motion, ducking beneath the chaos of the Mongol advance and looking for a foothold in a world being reduced to ash. The story of the Ottomans begins here, with a landless group of refugees navigating a continental apocalypse. They found a way to use the vacuum left by falling powers to plant the seeds for one of the most formidable empires in history. During their long migration, the Kai encountered Sufi mystics, traveling scholars and poets who practiced an intimate spiritual form of Islam. Through these encounters, the tribe adopted the faith, finding a spiritual anchor that would sustain them through the uncertainty of their journey west. This new belief system merged with their existing martial skills to create a specific identity: the Ghazi. A Ghazi was a frontier warrior who saw the defense of the faith as a unifying mission, giving their expertise with horse and bow a higher purpose. At the edge of Anatolia, they met the Seljuk Sultanate. The Seljuks were the dominant Islamic power, known for their grand architecture and Persian-influenced culture. However, by the time the Kaya arrived, the Sultanate was weakening, struggling to hold its borders against mounting external pressure. Historical tradition holds that the Kaya leader, Ertugrul, stumbled upon a battle where the Seljuk army was facing defeat. He led his warriors into the fray, turning the tide of the conflict and earning the trust of the Seljuk Sultan. This intervention led to a critical compact. Ertugrul provided military protection and loyalty, and in return, the Sultan granted him the border town of Sogat. It was a modest outpost of timber and stone, but it sat on the western frontier, the very edge of the Seljuk world. This agreement provided the Kai with something more valuable than grazing rights: a recognized territory and a legitimate place within the Seljuk political order. Sot sat on a volatile frontier, positioned directly between 2 decaying eras. To the east, the Seljuks were fracturing under the weight of Mongol oversight, their old imperial authority slowly dissolving. To the west lay the remnants of the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantines were retreating behind their ancient walls, struggling to maintain their hold on the provinces of western Anatolia. Ertugrul seized the opportunity. He launched raids against Byzantine outposts, capturing grain and livestock while harassing their road networks. These successes spread his reputation, drawing in thousands of independent Turkmen warriors looking for a leader with a clear objective. While he expanded his borders, Ertugrul also built a home. He established markets, encouraged trade, and formed a close alliance with the influential scholar Sheikh Edebali. This provided the Kai with the civic and spiritual structure they needed to settle permanently. By balancing military expansion with the creation of local institutions, Ertugrul moved his people beyond the habits of nomadic flight. He was building the framework of a self-sustaining state. When Ertugrul died around the year 1280, the Seljuks had become ceremonial puppets of the Mongols. The actual center of power in western Anatolia had shifted to the frontier valleys, where the Kai had taken root. Leadership passed to his son Osman. Osman solidified his father's alliances by marrying the daughter of Sheikh Edebali, a union that formally connected the tribe's military strength with the region's spiritual authority. Legend says that while staying at the Sheikh's lodge, Osman dreamed a tree grew from his chest. Its roots spread through the earth, and its branches shaded the world's cities, sheltering people across multiple continents. This dream signaled that the tribe's ambitions had moved beyond survival. They now saw their expansion as a matter of divine destiny. The Ottoman state did not start with overwhelming strength, but with a remarkable ability to adapt. By securing a foothold between dying empires and binding a displaced people together with a unified vision, Ertuğrul turned a modest frontier outpost into the anchor point for a 6th-century dynasty. According to old tribal tales, a young man named Osman once had a powerful dream. From his chest sprang a great tree. Its roots sank deep into the earth, and its branches stretched across the sky, casting a shadow over rivers, cities, and kingdoms as far as the eye could see. This story serves as the foundational myth for a dynasty that would go on to rule longer than any other continuous sovereign line in history. They would hold power over a massive empire for more than 6 centuries. The reality of his early life, however, looked nothing like a grand imperial destiny. Born around 1258, Osman was simply a boy of the Kayı. The Kayı were one of the 24 original Oghuz Turkic clans, a nomadic people living in tents on the harsh Anatolian frontier. This map shows 13th century Anatolia and the geopolitical trap Osman's people faced. They were squeezed between the crumbling Byzantine Empire and the weakening Seljuk Sultanate. The Kayı territory acted as a narrow buffer, serving as frontier guardians tasked with defending these borders against Byzantine incursions. The stability of this arrangement shattered around 1280. Osman's father, Ertuğrul, passed away, instantly triggering a dangerous power vacuum within the tribe. Under Turkic and Mongol tradition, leadership does not automatically pass to the eldest son. Instead, the title of bey must be actively seized. A bey is a tribal chieftain whose authority is derived from strength, charisma, and the ability to command loyalty in times of chaos. This succession crisis struck at a moment when the surrounding empires were collapsing. The tribe's survival depended entirely on choosing a leader who could manipulate this chaos, turning a localized family dispute into a fight for their very existence. This family tree outlines the 3 main contenders for Kayı leadership. First, there was Savci, Osman's older brother, who commanded deep respect. Then there was Dündar, Osman's uncle, a senior figure who prized caution and stability. Finally, there was Osman himself, young, ambitious, and hungry to expand. To bypass the strict rules of seniority, Osman executed his first strategic maneuver. He secured the absolute loyalty of the younger warriors. He also won over the Ghazis, Muslim frontier fighters driven by the ideal of holy struggle. He then paired this military weight with powerful spiritual backing. He forged a crucial alliance with Sheikh Edebali. Edebali was a revered Sufi mystic whose teachings emphasized justice and divine purpose in leadership. By marrying Edebali's daughter, Osman successfully fused his rising military force with undeniable religious legitimacy. This growing ambition alarmed his uncle, Dündar. Dündar wanted to curb his nephew's aggressive border raids to maintain the fragile peace. According to early Ottoman chronicles, this friction escalated from a strategic disagreement into an active rebellion against Osman. To prevent the tribe from splitting into warring factions, Osman made a brutal, pragmatic decision. He drew his sword and executed his uncle. This internal victory cemented his authority over the Kayı, abandoning family loyalty to enforce absolute political unity. The execution of Dündar established a harsh precedent for the emerging state. The survival and unity of the empire would always supersede ties of blood. With his internal position secured, his first major external test arrived in 1284 at the Battle of Armenia Belli. A hostile coalition of Byzantine Tekfurs moved their forces against the Kayı. Tekfurs were independent Byzantine governors who ruled over isolated, crumbling fortresses. Byzantine commanders launched a preemptive strike, desperate to neutralize Osman's influence before it grew further. The stakes at Armenia Belli involved long-term regional control, transcending the value of any single castle or territory. In the narrow, rugged passes of Armenia Belli, Osman demonstrated his mastery of frontier warfare. He utilized swift cavalry raids, orchestrated ambushes, and executed feigned retreats, turning the harsh terrain itself into a weapon against the heavily armored Byzantine coalition. While the historical records point to a tactical draw, the battle produced one pivotal casualty. Osman's older brother, Savci Bey, died in the fighting while defending their people. The political aftermath of Savci's death resolved any lingering tensions over succession. With his final potential rival gone, Osman stood entirely unchallenged as the sole leader of the Kai. The violent geography of the frontier had acted as a brutal filter. It tested the tribe through fire and political bloodshed, leaving only the most ruthless and adaptable leader standing at the helm. With total control of his tribe, Osman shifted his focus. He transitioned from a border raider into a meticulous state builder. He fostered active trade with neighboring towns, welcomed scholars and mystics to his territory, and built a safe haven that attracted warriors from across the region. At the exact same time, the macro-politics of Anatolia were shifting in his favor. The Seljuk sultans, who had previously offered the Kai protection and authority, were fading into mere figureheads under the immense pressure of Mongol invasions from the east. As the central authority in Konya grew silent, a vast power vacuum opened up. Osman recognized the opportunity and used this lack of oversight to shift his status from a vassal of the Seljuks to an independent ruler. He formalized this independence by instituting the khutbah in his own name. The khutbah is the formal Friday sermon delivered to the congregation in an Islamic mosque. In Islamic statecraft, having the preacher invoke a leader's name from the pulpit is the ultimate public, legal declaration of independent rule over a territory. To hear Osman's name spoken during the khutbah meant he answered to no other earthly sovereign. Osman engineered his rise through a series of deliberate, high-stakes maneuvers. From a frontier tent, he utilized spiritual legitimacy and calculated statecraft to plant the roots of a 600-year dynasty.